I never imagined that a leather-bound book, hidden behind a forgotten pile of winter coats, would be the thing to unravel 25 years of marriage, or at least the illusion of it. I was supposed to be getting ready for a surprise dinner, a symbolic milestone to honor a quarter-century with the woman I believed I'd grow old beside. I had just picked up a silver bracelet I'd had engraved to forever, my love, T. Something simple, timeless, something I thought she'd cherish. Linda loved nostalgia, or so I thought. As I was clearing space in our closet to hide the gift box, I knocked over an old shoebox, and something hard thudded against the floor. Tucked beneath it, wrapped in a crumbling yellowed T-shirt, was a journal thick, worn, and bound in burgundy leather. It was out of place, out of time, and before I even opened it, I felt a knot twist in my stomach, the kind of feeling you get when your gut knows something your heart hasn't caught up to yet. I wish I could say I stopped myself. I wish I could say I respected her privacy and moved on. But the temptation, the whispering, what if, clawed too loud in my head. I opened it, just to peek. I told myself, just a page or two, just to satisfy my curiosity before tucking it away and pretending I'd never seen it. But the first sentence on that brittle first page didn't give me that option. Sometimes I wonder what it would feel like to love someone I actually respect. My breath caught. I stood frozen in our bedroom closet, one hand on the hanger rod, the other trembling as I turned the page. Every paragraph was a hammer to the foundation I thought we had built. Complaints about my job, my laugh, even the way I chewed food. But worse, far worse, were the confessions. I told Tom I had the flu that weekend. I was actually in Denver with Mark. That entry was dated 2003. She told me she was visiting her cousin. We even argued about it because she refused to let me come along. I kept reading, eyes glued, stomach sinking deeper into an ocean of disbelief and rage. It wasn't one affair. It was a pattern. There were entries about how easy it was to fool me, how predictable I'd become, like a character in her story instead of her husband, a placeholder until the next thrill arrived. And the worst part? The casual tone. Just cold, detached documentation, like she was proud of her little secret history, hidden in plain sight all these years. That closet used to be just a place where we stored coats and Christmas lights. But that night, it became a graveyard. A burial site for the man I thought I was, and for the woman I thought I married. I sat in the garage with the overhead light off, crouched on an old milk crate with nothing but the pale flicker of a flashlight pressed between my neck and shoulder, the cold cement floor biting through my jeans. And the journal wide open in my lap like it had grown claws and latched onto me. I couldn't stop reading, not because I wanted to, but because every line felt like a punch I had to take in order to understand just how long I'd been asleep inside my own life. Somewhere between page 30 and page 75, I stopped recognizing the woman I married and started meeting the version of her that had always existed beneath the surface, clever, calculating, and completely unconcerned with the wreckage she left in her wake. She wrote with the ease of someone who didn't fear being caught. He'll never find this. Tom doesn't look that deeply into anything, she had scribbled on one page, and I swear I felt the air get thinner around me. It was like the garage, the house, my entire world was shrinking inward, suffocating me with the realization that I'd been nothing more than a prop in her carefully crafted fantasy. I flipped to a dated entry from 2005, the year I'd nearly left her after one of our worst fights, back when I still thought we could salvage things with time and counseling. She had cried on the bathroom floor that night, holding her stomach, telling me she'd just lost a baby we hadn't even known she was carrying. I remember collapsing to the tile beside her, apologizing for everything, swearing I'd do better. According to the journal, there was no baby. I needed to give him something that would bind him to me emotionally again, she'd written, followed by, I never actually liked the idea of kids with him. 2. Limiting. My hand shook as I turned the page. More revelations poured out like poison. The business trip to Phoenix in 2011? She described it as her first real affair, a 2-night stay with a man she'd met at a trade show, calling it a vacation from mediocrity. My stomach churned, not just from betrayal, but from the casual, almost gleeful way she documented it all, as if her life with me was the decoy, the disguise she wore while living a secret existence in the shadows of conference rooms, hotel lobbies, and dimly lit lounges. What gutted me wasn't just the cheating, although that alone would have been enough to break a weaker man. It was the total, bone-deep contempt she had for everything I had ever loved. She mocked the small town I worked so hard to settle us into, calling it a cemetery with a Dairy Queen, and described my family, my mother, who helped raise our kids when Linda's job pulled her away, as A pack of uneducated dullards whose approval I tolerate the same way I tolerate food poisoning, with a fake smile and clenched teeth. She called me predictable, reliable, and the one that stuck like glass in the throat, my insurance policy. Reading those words, I realized I hadn't just lost a wife that night. I lost the story I'd told myself for 25 years. I lost the belief that love, effort, and loyalty could keep two people together. And in its place, I was handed the ugly, unfiltered truth. I had been living beside a stranger who knew exactly how to make me believe she loved me while secretly despising everything I was. I've never won an Oscar, but if they gave out statues for pretending everything was fine while your entire world burned quietly behind your eyes, I'd have walked away with one by now. That first morning after discovering Linda's journal, I made coffee, kissed her on the cheek, and complimented her on that oatmeal raisin thing she bakes once a week, the same one I now couldn't eat without tasting lies. She smiled at me with those soft, practiced eyes, the ones I used to think meant safety and home, and she asked if I wanted to go out to dinner for our anniversary next Friday. Maybe that Italian place you love, the one with the candlelit booths, she said, reaching across the counter to touch my hand. Her fingers grazed mine like it meant something, but all I could feel was revulsion curling inside my bones, because I had read the entry where she called sex with me mechanical, and said she faked the moaning just well enough to keep me from noticing she'd mentally checked out somewhere around year 8. So I smiled back. I laughed at her jokes. I even suggested she get that new dress she'd been eyeing at the mall last month. You know, the one with the high slit that she claimed made her feel dangerously young again. I encouraged it, because now I wasn't just a betrayed husband. I was a man planning his revenge, and to do that properly, I needed her guard down, her confidence intact, her little empire of deceit still shining with delusional brilliance. Every day that week, I played the part of the grateful, aging husband clinging to his beautiful, vibrant wife. I texted her from work. I picked up her dry cleaning. I even left a post-it note on her car windshield one morning that said, 25 years and I'd still choose you. She texted back a heart emoji and a kiss, and I smiled like a man in love while my stomach turned over, because I had also read the page where she laughed about how easily I fell for affection. Tom's like a puppy, she wrote. Pet him, feed him, and he'll never notice you're already out the door. What haunts me most now, what still claws at the walls of my mind, is how easily she wore her mask. Not just the makeup and the rehearsed smiles, but the effortless, almost joyful way she could sit across from me and talk about weekend plans while I knew, without a doubt, that she had written, and I quote, the last time we had sex. I counted ceiling tiles just to keep from gagging. That was dated 3 months ago. I remember the night. I remember how afterward she curled up next to me and whispered, I love you, honey. And I remember believing her. God help me, I believed her. So I played dumb, let her think she still had me wrapped around her manicured finger, and waited for our anniversary, because if she thought she was going to toast to 25 years of manipulation and betrayal with a glass of overpriced Pinot, then I was going to make damn sure it was a night she'd never forget. There's a certain kind of silence that fills your ears when reality slaps you hard enough, not the kind that's peaceful, but the kind that rings, like a bomb just went off nearby, and you're the only one left standing. That's what I heard when I read the journal entry dated just 14 days ago, not 14 months, not 14 years, but 2 damn weeks. It started casually, a bullet-pointed rundown of her week. Errands, work meetings, spin class, and then casually slipped in like it was a dentist appointment. R was incredible again. He always makes me feel 25. I wore the red dress he likes. At first, I thought maybe I'd misread, that I was projecting pain into something innocent. But then I saw the line that stripped the breath clean from my lungs. It's getting harder to look Tom in the eyes after nights like this. I wish he wasn't so nice. It would make this easier. That's when I knew it wasn't over. It wasn't history. It was happening right now, in real time, while I tucked away pain behind a smile and planned a steakhouse reservation to celebrate a marriage that was already burning to ash. And the name, R, didn't stay a mystery for long. Because when you've lived beside a liar long enough, your brain starts assembling puzzles you didn't even know you'd collected the pieces for. She had mentioned Ron at least a dozen times over the years, always with that annoying tone of ugh, he's such a handful, which I now recognize was just a smokescreen meant to throw me off the scent. Ron, married, works in marketing. He was the one who offered to drive her back to the hotel during that company retreat in Tampa 2 months ago when, according to her, she drank too much wine and felt dizzy. I remember feeling a twinge in my gut when she told me that story. Something didn't sit right, but like an idiot, I shrugged it off, told myself not to be so damn insecure. But now I knew. It wasn't wine that made her dizzy. It was him. And it wasn't the first time. From the entries, it sounded like they'd been meeting since at least February, sometimes during lunch breaks, sometimes during team-building weekends, which, as it turns out, had nothing to do with synergy and everything to do with sex and rented rooms. I sat there in the garage, gripping that journal like it was a ticking bomb, and the fuse was almost burned out. This wasn't a story of a broken past I could bury. This was an open wound bleeding in the present, a live betrayal unfolding while I was right there, too blind to see it. She was in the house, in my bed, kissing me goodnight and pretending nothing had changed, while less than 15 miles away, her married coworker, a man I had shaken hands with at last year's company holiday party, was probably still saving her number under some dumb code name. And still, she smiled at me like I was the only man she'd ever loved. I had never felt smaller. But that night, under the low buzz of a flickering garage bulb and the bitter stink of gasoline on my hands, I made a quiet promise to myself I wouldn't confront her yet. I'd collect everything. I'd know everything. And when I finally move, I won't just catch her in the act. I'll bury her with it. There's a certain point in betrayal where pain gives way to calculation, when the tears dry up and your mind sharpens into something cold, precise, and lethal. That's where I found myself the morning after reading about Linda's ongoing affair with Ron. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't even speak a word to her about it. Instead, while she took a shower before work, humming, like someone without a care in the damn world, I quietly pulled out the burner phone I'd ordered a few days earlier, along with a USB cloning kit I'd researched until 2 in the morning. I cloned her phone, contacts, messages, photos, everything, and set the clone to sync automatically through a secure cloud I routed through a second dummy email she'd never trace. That wasn't enough. I waited for her to leave for work, then stepped outside, lifted the mat in her SUV, and wedged a micro camera under the dashboard, motion-activated, night vision, looped storage, and when I shut the door, I didn't feel guilt. I felt ready. I felt like a man dragging the shovel to the grave she had already dug. What I wasn't ready for, not even close, was the voicemail that popped into the clone phone later that night. I was alone in the kitchen, half drunk on the illusion that maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe there was still a piece of her I could reason with, when it vibrated in my hand and showed a new message from a number I instantly recognized as Ron's. I hit play, not expecting much. What I got was a gut punch I will never forget. Her voice came through the speaker low and breathless, a sick kind of whisper soaked in lust and deception. God, I still feel you inside me. I can smell you on my skin. I want you again, tonight. Tom will be out at the gym. I'll leave the side door open like last time. My hands started shaking so violently I dropped the phone. I just stood there for a second, staring at the tile floor like it had split open beneath me, because that was the confirmation I didn't know I still needed. Not a journal entry from the past. Not a suspicion. This was now. Real. Current. And it was happening just feet from the life I had worked for decades to build. I picked the phone up, saved the message, copied it, emailed it to my private account, and then deleted the original recording so she wouldn't suspect a thing. I also downloaded her text messages from that day, one of which included a selfie she sent Ron from the work parking lot, complete with a suggestive caption that made my skin crawl. I sat in my truck for the next 20 minutes, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the time for pretending was almost over. But I also knew I couldn't strike just yet. No, I needed more. I needed timing. I needed witnesses. I needed the kind of truth you don't just expose, the kind you detonate. She had her secrets. Now I had mine, and I was going to weaponize every last one of them. There's a particular kind of cruelty in orchestrating a perfect evening with someone you know is lying to your face. Like setting a table for a celebration you both know is built on a corpse, smiling politely while the stench of betrayal hangs invisible in the air. And still I did it. I made the reservation at the exact restaurant she'd hinted at 2 weeks earlier. The one with the dim lighting, the imported wines, the live cello player tucked in the corner like we were in a romance movie instead of a psychological thriller. I picked her up at 7, complimented her dress, opened her door, and even brushed a kiss against her cheek that made my skin feel like it was rotting. In my jacket pocket was a necklace she didn't deserve, silver and emerald, her favorite combination, and in my breast pocket, Beneath the fabric and near my heart was a tiny voice recorder, clipped and live. I wanted her to remember this dinner for the rest of her life, not because it marked 25 years of marriage, but because it would be the last one we ever shared. She played her role flawlessly, smiling with fake surprise when the waiter brought out champagne, cooing softly when I slid the velvet box across the table, and she opened it to reveal a necklace that matched the color of her betrayal. "Tom, it's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes wide, misty, perfectly rehearsed. "You always know just what I like." I smiled and leaned forward. 25 years of love," I said. Then I lifted my glass, holding her gaze. "And 25 years of lies." She didn't even flinch, just gave a soft laugh, as if I were joking. "You're terrible," she grinned, clinking her glass against mine. But I wasn't laughing. I didn't blink. I wanted the recorder to catch every syllable that followed. So I kept it going. I baited her with memories, walked her down the past like I was reminiscing, while carefully guiding the conversation toward her work, toward Ron. I asked innocent-sounding questions. "How's that guy from marketing? What's his name again? The funny one who drinks too much." She bit. She always bites when she thinks she's the smartest person in the room. "Oh, Ron?" she said with a grin too casual to be innocent. "Yeah, he's intense, but brilliant. Definitely keeps things exciting." I asked, with a chuckle, "Exciting how?" And she smirked, resting her chin on her palm like we were teenagers sharing secrets. "Let's just say he's got energy, knows how to take control when he needs to." My grip on the wine glass tightened just slightly. She didn't notice. She was too busy believing she'd gotten away with it, too distracted by her own arrogance to hear the subtle shift in my voice, the way my words slowed just enough to let her keep talking. She thought she'd won. She thought this dinner was a victory lap. She had no idea that she'd just given me everything I needed. And soon, very soon, she was going to choke on the dessert she thought she'd earned. You know that moment when the dam finally breaks, not with chaos and crashing waves, but with eerie, deliberate silence? That was me the morning after the anniversary dinner, sitting in a divorce attorney's office while the woman I'd loved for half my life thought she was basking in the afterglow of her own deception. The lawyer, an older man named Carl with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for sentiment, didn't flinch as I laid out everything. The journal entries, the cloned phone, the recorded dinner conversation, even the grainy screenshots from the camera under her dashboard. He listened like a surgeon sizing up a patient before cutting into them, nodding only once before saying, "This is surgical. We won't just win, we'll bury her." And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to power again. Because I wasn't stumbling through betrayal anymore. I was engineering justice, piece by piece, like a man building his own guillotine and sharpening the blade himself. That same night, after Linda kissed me on the cheek and told me she was going to bed early, which I now understood meant she was probably texting Ron under the covers, I slipped into the garage, opened my laptop, and began the second phase of the plan, exposing him. I knew Ron had a wife, a woman named Elise, who I'd met once at a company barbecue, all smiles and pastel sundress, utterly unaware of the fire smoldering in her own backyard. I created a clean email account, attached a folder labeled Read Me, and uploaded everything: voice messages, journal scans, screenshots, location logs. The cherry on top? A copy of the restaurant audio where Linda flirted with her own guilt over shrimp risotto. I didn't write anything dramatic, just a subject line that read, "You deserve to know the truth." Then I mailed a physical flash drive to her workplace, anonymously, just in case she missed the email. I wasn't after theatrics. I was after impact. Because sometimes revenge isn't about screaming from the rooftops. Sometimes it's about whispering into the right ear and watching the avalanche begin. For the next few days, I played it exactly the way predators do in the wild. Still, patient, watching. Linda smiled more than usual, maybe thinking the dinner had wiped the slate clean, and I let her live in that delusion. I still kissed her goodbye in the mornings, still cooked dinner, still laughed at her empty stories like a man too blind to know better. But beneath it all, the ground was shifting. Elise never replied, but I didn't expect her to. I knew how that kind of betrayal lands, like a punch you can't breathe through, and I imagined her sitting in some dark room just like I had, rereading the evidence with shaking hands and fire crawling up her spine. One thing was certain, the silence on her end wasn't denial. It was preparation. The trap was almost ready. All it needed now was a trigger. And when it snapped shut, It wasn't just going to end Linda's little fairy tale, it was going to tear the pages out and set the whole damn book on fire. There are few moments in life when silence screams louder than rage, and on that warm Saturday afternoon, standing beneath string lights and the smell of grilled ribs, I orchestrated the loudest silence our backyard had ever known. It was our annual summer barbecue, the kind Linda loved to host, carefully curated playlists, centerpieces made with Pinterest precision, and an audience she could charm with her signature laugh and glass of overpriced Chardonnay in hand. Family and friends buzzed around in lawn chairs, swapping small talk and pulling foil off side dishes, while Linda floated through the crowd like she was the queen of some suburban fairy tale. And I let her have it, one last day as the woman she pretended to be. One last act on a stage I had built. When the music softened and dessert was being passed around, I clinked a spoon to my glass, asked for everyone's attention, and said I had a special gift to present to my wife of 25 years. I held up a beautifully wrapped box, thick, square, and heavy. Her eyes lit up, probably assuming it was a photo book or a framed family portrait, something sentimental that would cement her status as the adored wife in front of our entire social circle. She opened it eagerly, peeling away the ribbon with the same hands that had clutched another man in hotel rooms across the state. And then, as she pulled back the tissue paper, her smile faltered. Slowly, she lifted the contents, a printed, bound version of her journal, the cover embossed with gold letters that read, "A Quarter Century of Truth" by Linda. I watched her expression shift in real time from confusion to dawning horror as she flipped through the pages, recognizing her own handwriting, her own secrets, her own confessions now staring back at her beneath a summer sun and 30 pairs of eyes. The crowd went quiet. You could hear the wind rustling the tablecloth. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. And that's when I spoke. "Divorce papers are on the way, Linda," I said, steady, clear, unwavering. "Hope Ron's worth half our assets." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, the man she thought she'd broken, holding the mirror she'd been running from for years. People gasped. A wine glass shattered somewhere behind me. Her sister covered her mouth, and our neighbor took a full step backward like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. Linda looked up at me, face drained of color, lips twitching like she wanted to deny it, to say it was a joke, a setup, a misunderstanding, but she couldn't. Because every lie was there in print, wrapped up like a gift and delivered in front of every person she'd ever fooled. And for the first time in decades, she was the one without control. The queen had fallen. The curtain had dropped. And I had never felt more free. They say karma moves slowly, like rust on iron or rot beneath floorboards. But when it finally collapses, it does so all at once, and it is merciless. Within 48 hours of the backyard revelation, the dominoes began to fall with terrifying precision. The flash drive I'd mailed to Ron's wife had clearly done its job, because by Monday morning, Elise had packed her things, left their marital home, and filed for divorce, not quietly, not discreetly, but with a fury that made headlines in their company's HR department. Apparently, she forwarded everything to Ron's employer, a Fortune 500 firm that doesn't take kindly to senior staff members using leadership retreats as cover for marital destruction. He was terminated within a week, walked out by security, no severance, no recommendations, just a cardboard box and a ruined career. Linda tried to call me that night, probably thinking I'd gloat. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The real revenge was watching her world unravel without me ever lifting another finger. By the end of that week, Linda had been summoned to a disciplinary hearing at her own office, a marketing firm known for its squeaky clean public image and family-first branding. An anonymous report had surfaced, complete with screenshots and timestamps showing gross misconduct, sexual favoritism, and inappropriate use of company resources. She tried to spin it, of course. Tried to say it was a smear campaign, that someone was out to ruin her. But they didn't buy it, not after HR pulled GPS data from her company phone that placed her at Ron's hotel on multiple occasions during supposed client meetings. She was fired on the spot. No recommendation. No apology. Just a reminder to clean out her desk by noon and never come back. Within 2 days, she was blacklisted in the local marketing scene. Her LinkedIn quietly went dark. Her inbox turned cold. And for the first time since I'd known her, she couldn't talk her way out of anything. But the worst blow wasn't corporate, it was personal. Our daughter, Lily, who had always idolized her mother, found out the truth. She saw the printed journal when she came home from college that weekend, asked questions, and got answers Linda couldn't spin. Lily was devastated. Not just by the cheating, but by the length of it, The manipulation, the pride her mother had taken in living a double life. She told Linda she never wanted to see her again, that she didn't recognize her anymore and wouldn't allow that kind of poison near her future children. Linda cried, begged, promised she could change, but it was too late. With no job, no husband, no lover, and no daughter, she packed what little she had left and moved into her older sister's spare bedroom, a woman who'd once told me, years ago, she'll ruin you if you let her. The prophecy had come true, just not for me. Brick by brick, lie by lie, Linda had built her kingdom, and now every stone was crashing down around her feet. And me? I didn't even flinch. I just watched. There's a strange peace that comes after a storm so violent it strips your life bare, not just a quiet, but a kind of clarity that only exists once everything fake, everything rotten, has finally been torn down. A year after serving Linda the coldest truth of her life in our backyard, I stood at the edge of a wide, open valley in Colorado, the wind pushing against my back like it was ushering me forward, and I knew I had finally stepped out of the wreckage. I sold the house 3 months after the divorce finalized, signed the papers with a smile, and drove west with nothing but a trailer full of tools, the leather seat from my first bike, and a burning need to rebuild something, not a relationship, not a reputation, but a life that belonged to me this time. I cashed out what I needed from the settlement, bought a modest cabin on a piece of land where the air actually smells like freedom, and finally opened the vintage motorcycle shop I dreamed about for 25 years while playing the role of husband, provider, puppet. I named it Iron Revival. It wasn't just a business, it was a resurrection. I spent my mornings covered in grease and sun, tuning carburetors while classic rock hummed through rusted speakers, and my evenings sipping coffee under a blood-orange sky, with no one lying next to me, no one pretending to love me with poison in their breath. And yes, eventually, I started dating again carefully, slowly, the way a man does after learning that love, when twisted by the wrong hands, can become a weapon more brutal than any knife. I met women who asked about my past, and I told them the truth, not the tabloids, not the polished version, my version, the one forged in fire and betrayal and the quiet power of walking away. And sometime last fall, I rescued a dog from a shelter on the edge of town, scruffy, scarred, and calm in the eyes like he'd seen some shit too. I named him Diesel. He sleeps beside my bed now, like a soldier who knows the war is finally over. Last week, I posted one final update to the same online thread where this story began, not for revenge, not for attention, but because someone out there needs to know that it does get better after the bottom drops out. I uploaded a photo of me in front of the shop, Diesel curled at my feet, mountains stretching out behind us like the pages of a book finally opening. And beneath it, I wrote one sentence, the truest thing I've ever said, and the one that finally set me free. Sometimes freedom looks like a pile of ashes and a rebuilt garage. I didn't lose a wife. I lost a lie.